Now hurry back to my father and say to him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, don't delay.
Yeah.
You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me, you, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come. Otherwise, you and your household and all who belong to you will become destitute. You can see for yourselves, and so can my brother Benjamin, that it is really I who am speaking to you. Tell my father all about the honor accorded me in Egypt, and about everything you have seen, and bring my father down here quickly. Then he threw his arms around his brother Benjamin and wept. And Benjamin embraced him, weeping. And he kissed all of his brothers and wept over them.
Yeah, that's right.
Afterward, his brothers talked with him. May God add a blessing.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. All right.
Say join me in a moment of prayer? Yeah. Lord, we come to you and we just give you thanks this day.
Thank you.
For allowing us to be engaged in this process, this experience of praise. Allowing us to be engaged in prayer and celebration. And to participate in joy with one another and ultimately with you, O God. Now, as this word is open to us, Lord, give us the ability not only to read it and see it, but to perceive what it may be saying to us in this time in which we live. Well, one thing is always certain, and that is that you are the potter and we are the clay.
Yes.
So mold us, O Lord, as you would have us to be, until we're perfectly fitted for your kingdom and able to call ourselves disciples of Jesus the Christ. Now, as we come to this teaching time, you develop it, you hone it, you shape it. You send it forth as you see fit. Allow it all to be acceptable and pleasing in your sight, our Lord and our Redeemer. Amen. I just want to take a moment and greet the family, the new family that's in our midst, and their 1-year-old baby. Amen. One month. I meant to say 1 month. Thank you. I said 1 year, didn't I? 1 month. Thank you for that. And welcome to Plymouth Congregational Church. And we're thankful that you made it all the way across the street. I want to take a few moments and speak on the subject, lift up the subject, lessons of overcoming. Lessons of overcoming. Now, this story is amazing with many different nuances to it.
Yeah.
And you can say when reading the story of Joseph, when you're up, you're up. And when you're down, you're down. Joseph has been up and down many times in the telling of the story. Joseph has been lifted up and Joseph has been put down. So much of Joseph's story reflects parts of our own stories. Because there are moments and sections in our own lives where we've been down and we've been up. There's a moment we thought we were up, we found ourselves put down all over again.
That's right.
There were people we trusted who let us down somewhere along the way. There were the people that we put our trust in that proved not to be trustworthy in the long run. There are the people that were jealous and cheered at our difficulties and troubles. There were people who cared less about what happened to us and through what ordeals we've had to endure. The story of Joseph is troubling and challenging and insightful at the same time. The story of Joseph is filled with unfairness and injustice, being wrongly accused and being forgotten when someone promised not to forget you. If you haven't read about Joseph's life, it is worth your while to do so. But don't just see Joseph in the story when you read it, but see Joseph and yourself in the story. See the life of Joseph and what about the ordeal of Joseph that mirrors your own life, even a part of your own life. And in what ways can you identify with Joseph? Now we know Joseph and his coat of many colors. Even Dolly Parton wrote and sang a song about Joseph and his coat of many colors. If y'all don't listen to country music, y'all don't know it. Unfortunately, that is all most of us know about this story. We don't know the colors on the coat or the meaning of those colors, but we can be assured that there was something in the giving of the coat that signified more than just the giving of a present. Joseph was the firstborn of Rachel, but at least the 11th born of Jacob. So Joseph was not the next in line as an heir because that would go to the elders. But something unnerving happened when Jacob gave Joseph that coat. Did it signify that he was being favored to lead the clan? That his father, against protocol, decided that the inheritance would fall to Joseph? This would create suspicion and animosity among the brothers, and it did. It would also appear that Joseph was a little boastful about where he found himself, the status he had with his father, and the way he shared his visions and gifts. In fact, one of the dreams that he shares with his brothers has them paying obedience to Joseph. They were offended at the thought that they should bow down to their younger brother. the brothers devised a plan to get rid of Joseph. They originally planned to kill him, but instead sold him to a passing caravan of Midianites, who in turn sold him to Ishmaelites. And the Ishmaelites sold him into slavery in Egypt, and Potiphar purchased Joseph. Joseph rose in the household of Potiphar, an Egyptian merchant, and Potiphar was so impressed by the intellect and knowledge that he set him over everything in his household. Joseph, his gifts, discipline, and hard work allowed him to excel even while a slave. But Potiphar's wife was attracted to Joseph, and according to the story, pounced on him one day, and Joseph ran away, leaving a portion of the garment ripped away in the hand of Potiphar's wife. She screamed assault, and this accusation of assault was really attempted rape, and that put Joseph in jail. Now, can you imagine that you're favored, then you're hated, then you're sold into slavery, then you're redeemed from obscurity as you rise in responsibility in the household of a master, and then is accused of attempted rape and thrown in jail? He was up, he was down, he was up again, he was down again.
Well,
when we look at our own lives, we can see some familiar and similar shadows. Yes. Now in jail, Joseph again uses his gifts to interpret dreams. Two of Pharaoh's servants are in jail, and Joseph shares a dream that he believes reveals the outcome of these servants' lives. And Joseph asks the servant who will be spared from Pharaoh's wrath to remember him when he is restored. Of course, this servant does not remember Joseph until there comes a time when the king or the Pharaoh is perplexed and needs someone to interpret a dream, and nobody can interpret the dream. And the guy all of a sudden remembers that Joseph has this gift of interpreting dreams. So they sent for Joseph. And Joseph interpreted the dream, and his interpretation is rational and in the end correct. And Joseph excels at his influence and position in the kingdom. He tells Pharaoh that the dreams mean that there will be 7 years of agricultural abundance, and then there will be 7 years of famine. Pharaoh uses this information to prepare for the famine by taking advantage of the good years of plenty and saving up grain and the like for the lean years that are yet to come. Pharaoh puts Joseph in charge of his storehouses, and this is when this tense and uneasy reunion takes place. Joseph's brothers come down to Egypt seeking food. They're seeking to survive the famine. And this is where they discover Joseph and realize that their survival is now in the hands of the one they sought to destroy. Just think of that. Right? The one you sought to destroy now holds your fate in his hands. Their fate is in the hands of the one that sought to annihilate. They sought to annihilate. And now there's this reversal of fortune that they are there at the mercy of the one that they tried to get rid of. Now, I don't know whether I could be as forgiven as Joseph seems to be. You know, maybe I would find myself saying something like this: unless you come back with a referral, we cannot serve you.
That's all right.
Maybe I wouldn't say a thing at all, but it would be clear that I wasn't going to serve them. Now, I would be tempted to do that. That's sort of my natural reaction, right? You done sold me into slavery, right? And because of that, I end up also in jail, right? And I end up estranged from my family, my clan, don't know whether my father is alive, and now I'm supposed to treat you benevolently? Right? You know, that's asking a lot. Y'all can admit that's asking a lot. Right? But this is precisely what this story is about, is for us to see ourselves in this story and ask ourselves about the reaction that Joseph had. Could that be our reaction as well? You see, if you're not to grow by the stories, then the stories serve no purpose at all. So the stories cause us to look at them and to try to grow in terms of our own existential quality and our own spiritual depth. And so here was Joseph doing what I know I would have a hard time doing. Now, I'm not lying. I'm just going to tell you the truth, right? It's sort of like, I'm not going to say I'm holy and sanctified and I wouldn't have some resentment in me, right? It's going to take me, y'all got to pray for me, I tell you. If I had been through what Joseph had been through, I'm not all that certain that I wouldn't have deep and unsettled resentment. In fact, many people falsely accuse, jailed, where years of life have been stolen, end up being mentally stressed, scarred, and distorted.
Yeah.
But Joseph, it would seem, somehow had gotten past all of that resentment. You see, I guess this is what we're being told, that when you've been through things like injustice, things like false accusations, things like being forgotten and being denied, you can either end up bitter or thankful that you've come through it all.
Yes. All right.
It is a matter of where you decide to place your energy. You know, I was on a radio show not too long ago, and we were talking about the subject of forgiveness. And I'll never forget that the host wanted to argue with me about the quality and the reasons to forgive. And that they said, well, we're not called to forgive. That's what the host was arguing with me. They said, if somebody does something to me wrong, I'm going to hold that grudge. And I had to remind that person, I said, if you're going to hold that grudge, that means that you're now living in the past.
That's right.
If you're going to hold that grudge, that means that you leave little space for anything else to occur in your life because you're stuck in this place.
That's good.
Right? I'm going to remember forever what Garrett Jordan did to me. Amen? But if I do that, then I'm stuck there. I haven't grown, I haven't moved, I haven't developed. I'm just stuck in that place. Now, Mr. Jordan, he might be going on with his life. May not even think twice about what has occurred. He's living it, but I'm stuck there. And therefore, you got to ask, who is holding who captive? Right? I'm being held captive by my grudges and my resentment. So it's a matter where you place your energy. Joseph had come from one side, just look at it, to the other side. Joseph was able to say out loud and to his brothers, you thought you had killed me, but God kept me alive. You thought that you had stolen my life, but God gave me life. You thought that no one would miss me in time, but God always held me close. You thought that I would not survive, but it was the Lord who kept me and saved me. Joseph looked at his life and proclaimed, as he looked at his life through the ups and the downs and the ups and the downs again, he looked at his life and proclaimed that God had brought him through. Joseph realized that God gave to him the gifts that would be his curse and his salvation in time. Joseph felt that God was with him in the depths, and God was also with him in the heights. It would seem to me that what Joseph is saying to himself and to others, that we cannot waste God's blessing by holding a grudge. That we cannot waste God's blessings by being stuck on stupid. We cannot waste God's blessings by being stuck in place. Now there are lessons to be gleaned. Particularly when we look back and see how we have miraculously overcome. There are things that we should have learned along the way. One of the things that we can discern in the story is that Joseph at first was a little too smug with his favorite status. And that got him into some trouble. You see, sometimes you got your nose stuck up in the air is when something's going to take you down. Right? It's when you think that you're all that in a bag of chips. You headed for all. When you think that you are the president of the United States and nothing can touch you. I got some news. One of the things that we learn is that you can't be all caught up in your sense of self and your arrogance. Right? That there is a virtue to being humble. Right? You know, and you don't need to brag on yourself.
Right.
If God blessed you, give thanks for God blessing you. It's not about you. It's about the blessings that are flowing through you to glorify God. Right? See, so the blessings is not about self-aggrandizement. Joseph thought he was better than his brothers at first, and you know, sometimes when you're high, you won't get knocked down low. And this got him into trouble. But every knockdown is a setup for a get-up.
All right.
Joseph advanced in Potiphar's household, but even when things are good, be aware of a setup. There was a setup and another put down. And now Joseph was a little wiser. And he asked Pharaoh's servant to remember him when you restore back to your post. And though Joseph was not raised up or remembered in the immediate, he was eventually raised up and remembered. So what I'm saying and understanding in that is that we need to have patience as we go through the stuff that we go through. Now, we may want it to work out yesterday, but it ain't going to work out yesterday. And we might want it to work out next minute, but sometimes it doesn't work out next minute. You see, he had to be patient with where he was and the conditions that he was in and the predicament that he was in, and he was patiently offered, in fact, at the most important and opportune time. In other words, instead of somebody remembering him and giving him a job as a baker, because the time didn't happen when he expected it to happen, it was now Pharaoh that wanted to have some advice. And Joseph was able to show up and show out in a different kind of way. He patiently offered himself at the most important and opportune time. He was before Pharaoh, and the moment was a moment that would make all the difference. And it was a moment that wouldn't come again. God was with Joseph, and he used his gifts to advance him into freedom and into the royal court. So when Joseph looked back, he thanked God. He thanked God for the good and the bad. He thanked the Lord because maybe it was God's plan to put him into such a position to save his whole family, his whole clan, and his whole people. And radically, we are reminded of how tables can rapidly change. Life can be up, and life can be down. Life can be filled with struggle, and life can reflect our overcoming. Now I wonder how fate affects us, how circumstances affect us, and how conditions mold and make us into who we are. The long cauldron of enslavement in this country impacted us in what ways? And what are the lessons that we have learned in overcoming that trauma? Medically speaking, when you overcome ailment and disease, how has it impacted you? And what are the lessons in overcoming that illness? Just living into older age, and the many things that you've overcome all along the way, and the many traumas that you've come through and have experienced, what are the lessons of overcoming all of those obstacles that have been in your life? What I'm pointing out is that it is not so much that you've come through, and it's not so much that you've overcome, but in your overcoming and coming through, what were the reasons and intentions of your struggle? You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It is like if you've been preserved. why? If you've come through difficulty and that's now behind you, why have you survived? Why are you still here? Is there a special purpose, a special mission that somehow you've been anointed with? I told this story many times, but it always was one of those moving stories, and it will remain a moving story in my life, was that when I was in Roxbury, Massachusetts, a guy who was my trusted sidekick stole all the money in the church. Every penny. Checks were bouncing all over the place. He had shot cocaine up intravenously, right? And come out that he was a closeted cocaine addict and had been so for almost 40 years. Right? That he was there and he had been through that. And so I was mad enough. Should I be confessional here? James, I used to carry a knife back here. And I was so mad that I started hunting Tony. And I knew that if I found him, that I was going to go to jail and he was going to go to the grave. I'm going to be honest with you. That's where I was. That's why I say I'm a long way from where Joseph was, right? But that was it. But it so happened that Tony's wife called me and said he's here. And so I went over there and I was mad, and I'm sitting there and I can't do anything in front of his wife. Right? That's right. I can't do it. So I whispered to Tony, I said, I can't do anything to you here. I said, but I'm going to be waiting when you step out in the street. Right? And I'm going to get you. Well, the next thing I know, I get a call about an hour later from Tony, who's asking me to get him into treatment.
All right.
And at first I was resentful towards that. I was angry. I didn't believe it. I believed it was a get-over, that he wasn't being truthful. But I said somehow in my heart of hearts, let me put all that aside and let me just go forth and do what I was supposed to do.
All right.
And so I got him into a program. And he stayed in that program. And they put him through H. And he stayed in that program. And when he came out on the other side, he came out and became one of the strongest evangelists in the recovery community.
All right.
Something that God had brought him through for a reason and for a purpose. That he was still here, not by his own doing, but by the grace of God. And therefore he knew that God had anointed him not to waste his life any longer, but to do something for the glory of God. He brought in over 2,500 recovering addicts, single-handedly, set up an underground, basically to get folks who are seeking recovery off the streets. Right? All of that because money was stolen from the church. You see, what I'm getting at is that sometimes you got to trust that God knows what God is doing, even when you don't know what you're doing. Right? Even when you don't know what God is doing. Sometimes we just got to sit back and decide to just go along with it, as the old folks used to say, to see what the end is going on. You see, what Joseph is saying here is that all along the way, he says, in the text, he says, God sent me before you to preserve life.
Yeah.
And he lifted up reasoning like, it was not you who sent me here, but God. And Joseph's understanding is summed up in Genesis chapter 50, verse 20, where it says, even though you intended to do me harm, God intended it for good. You know, so we begin to learn from this text the story of our own existence. That we're not here just to fill up space. We're not here just to take up time. We're not here just to create fuss and nonsense, but we're here for a divine and holy and sacred purpose. Because each of us, all of us, we've been through something. All of us have had to come through it and face something. We're not where we used to be, thank God. But we're not yet where we should be, thank God. But we're moving forward to that place. We've all been through something. And by coming through something, that has been our anointing. to do something of reason, something of purpose, something of mission for the glory
Yes, yes,
God has brought us
yes.
for a purpose,
Yes.
a reason,
And it's real.
and a mission. The doors of the church are open. If there's anybody here today that wants to express an intention to unite in fellowship with this church, we invite you to come forward. If somebody wants to have a relationship with Jesus but don't yet have it, I invite you forward. Come and be a part of this movement that we call the movement of Jesus Christ. The doors of the church are open. Let you come forward and join us.
508.
508.
Listen to show.
Lord, we just ask that you just continue to light our pathways and guide our footsteps and allow us to bring hope into the midst of this world. We pray this prayer in the name of the Creator, the Son, and Jesus the Christ, the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.